if Ron DeSantis had chartered a plane and had dropped 50 migrants in, the middle of Saskatchewan in the mountains, I know that's Canada, but, that's obviously not nice. Like, that's obviously putting people. He dropped them in Martha's Vineyard, Clay. He dropped them. The plane dropped them in a place that is known for its wealth, beauty, and safety nationwide. Yes. And we're acting like they were sent to the gulag.
Buck, the shipping of these illegal immigrants. First of all, we should mention we now have gone over 2 million illegals in this calendar year. I believe they run basically October to October fiscal year. And since Joe Biden came into office, by the time we are done with this year, it appears quite clear that there will be over 5 million illegal entries into the United States.
And we're seeing early indicators, as anticipated, that there may in fact be a flight of migrants soon to be inbound to Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, which is the vacation home town of President Joe Biden. Hasn't happened yet, looking likely to happen. The Democrats, you can tell, are still very upset about this situation. They're still very angry about this because nothing, as I've said, hypocrisy is who they are, and that's their way of wielding power. But mockery, they cannot abide mockery. Democrats, leftists, collectivists, libs, the commies, you make fun of them, and they never forgive you because it actually erodes their power, which is what bothers them more than anything else. When you start to make fun of how crazy their ideas are, how absurd this whole thing is, oh, they enriched our lives. For the 44 hours the migrants were on the vineyard, right?
So we deported them.
That's the story. Until we took the military and removed them. And here we have the sheriff of San Antonio. I was not anticipating this. Sheriff of San Antonio saying that they are officially opening an investigation into human trafficking from these migrant flights. Can we play that one?
We are opening up a case with an investigation with regard to the suspected activities involving the 48 migrants from Venezuela that, as we understand it at this point, the facts of the case at this point, are that on Wednesday, September 14th, here in Bexar County in the city of San Antonio, our understanding is that a Venezuelan migrant was paid what we would call a bird dog fee to recruit approximately 50 migrants from the area around a migrant resource center on San Pedro here in San Antonio. As we understand it, 48 migrants were lured, I will use the word lured, under false pretenses into staying at a hotel for a couple of days. They were taken by airplane. At a certain point, they were shuttled to an airplane where they were flown to Florida and then eventually flown to Martha's Vineyard, again, under false pretenses is the information that we have, that they were promised work, they were promised the solution to several of their problems. They were taken to Martha's Vineyard from what we can gather for little more than a photo op, video op, and then they were unceremoniously stranded in Martha's Vineyard. What infuriates me the most about this case is that here we have 48 people that are already on hard times, right? They are here legally in our country at that point. They have every right to be where they are. And I believe that they were preyed upon. Somebody came from out of state, preyed upon these people, lured them with promises of a better life, which is what they were absolutely looking for, with the knowledge that they were going to cling to whatever hope they could be offered for a better life, to just be exploited and hoodwinked into making this trip to Florida and then onward to Martha's Vineyard for what I believe to be nothing more than political posturing.
Now, he says he's opening a criminal investigation. Now, this is grandstanding. At some level, it's so stupid that I think people have to understand. They're saying, oh, but they were induced. Somebody promised them that there would be a job for them. Who and what exactly? If somebody says to me, hey, do you want to lift into town? I know a guy who can get you a job, I think, and I decide to jump into their car and take a ride, that's not kidnapping. If I don't end up with a job at the end, it's actually not kidnapping. It's just somebody saying that they think I could probably apply for a gig somewhere else. What is it when the Biden administration flies people, including children, in the middle of the night all over the country because they feel like it? I'm just wondering.
Joe Biden would be the greatest human trafficker in the history of American human trafficking, certainly the modern history of any president, if this were the standard that was going to be applied. Because as you well mentioned, Buck, Joe Biden and his administration have been flying people who are illegal immigrants all over this country for the entirety of his administration. And look, this is why you have to keep the pressure up on them. Play offense here. The only time Democrats are willing to discuss the border is when immigrant populations come into their cities. New York it happened, Chicago it happened, and Washington, D.C. it happened. Tiny pinprick of the what the people of Arizona and Texas have to deal with on a daily basis. All it takes is 50 people showing up in Martha's Vineyard, and there is a humanitarian crisis that is in effect. And meanwhile, we got, as we just said, over 2 million people who so far this fiscal year have come across the border into this country, over 5 million since Joe Biden came into office. That's the population roughly, I believe, of Los Angeles County, which puts into perspective how many people that is. Any of you who have ever driven around to L.A., just think about the population of the city of Los Angeles, inside of Los Angeles County. That's how many people have illegally come into this country, and it's not stopping.
They're also lying about
this,
which is always a tell. I mean, the libs, when they have bad arguments, they lie. They just lie in general. And Governor Ron DeSantis, also, I love this. So does the sheriff of San Antonio? What's he going to do? He's going to just show up and try to make an arrest to the governor of Florida over this? Is that really the plan? I wonder what the Bexar County sheriff thinks he's going to do to the governor of Florida here. But DeSantis just points out what's obvious, which is this is all so dumb and not true, and it's not human trafficking, and nobody was forced against their will to get on a plane. Play 6.
Yeah, not only that, they all signed consent forms to go, and then the vendor that is doing this for Florida provided them with a packet that had a map of Martha's Vineyard. It had the numbers for different services on Martha's Vineyard, and then it had numbers for the overall agencies in Massachusetts that handle things involving immigration and refugees. So it was clearly voluntary, and all the other nonsense you're hearing is just not true. And why wouldn't they want to go, given where they were? They were in really, really bad shape, and they got to be cleaned up, everything treated well, and then put in a situation. Because, Sean, there are jobs available in Martha's Vineyard. There is lodging available in Martha's Vineyard. Had they lived up to what they billed themselves at as a sanctuary jurisdiction, they could have absorbed those people without a problem. But here's the thing. They said they didn't have housing. They said they couldn't accommodate. Let's just say that's true for a minute. Well, what does that mean for these poor towns in Texas? What does it mean for these other places across the country that are seeing influx? What does it mean to these small towns that Biden has dumped so many people in?
Can I just point out, I'd be willing to at least listen to the whining of the lib, because they just got made fools of by this. They were made fools of, and they know it, and now they're seething. Okay, if Ron DeSantis had chartered a plane and had dropped 50 migrants in, the middle of Saskatchewan in the mountains, I know that's Canada, but, that's obviously not nice. That's obviously putting people. He dropped them in Martha's Vineyard, Clay. He dropped them, the plane dropped them in a place that is known for its wealth, beauty, and safety nationwide. Yes. And we're acting like they were sent to the gulag.
Yeah. Well, and this is why I think you got to keep it up. You can't allow them, by this idiot sheriff down in San Antonio, as we talked about when this story, I think, broke, there's way more Democrat indignation over these 50 than there has been of the over 700 illegal immigrants who died trying to come into the country, including the 50 that were found dead in the back of a truck. And the reason why they are angry about it is because they couldn't even handle 50 immigrants in Martha's Vineyard. They had to call in human services. They had to involve, I think they called up like 125 different members of the National Guard to be able to handle it. They had to transport them to a military base. We had that woman's audio who we played, and she was like, we just can't even handle 50 people. Meanwhile, what do you think? 90% of the high-end homes on Martha's Vineyard currently unoccupied as it comes up on the end of the summer season. Certainly when it's October, the vast majority of those high-end homes are not going to be occupied. We had that nice woman who called in from Martha's Vineyard and pointed out, Buck, that that a lot of people have these multi-million-dollar homes and only use them for 2 weeks every year. They don't even bother to travel back and forth all the time. They just use them for a couple of weeks a year. So of all the places you could be put, I would argue that Martha's Vineyard probably has per capita some of the highest available houses and rooms of almost anywhere in the entire country that are not actually being used because it's not a primary residence for the vast majority of people.
This is, I've admitted this now numerous times. I had assumed because there have been rumblings that this would happen for a while, that the community of Martha's Vineyard would be smart enough in response to this to say, oh,
yes,
50 migrants have been dropped here. Hey, there's this inn that's currently not in use. We'll all band together. We'll raise. You know, they have a GoFundMe. They do have a GoFundMe, but it's not going to the migrants. It's going to the community of the vineyard to prepare, I guess, for future migrant flights, maybe, or something. But I figured that they would take it as an opportunity to say, oh, we absolutely want migrants. But, you know, Clay, it reminds me of this. There is a fantastic distillation of the lib mentality that plays out in New York City every couple of years. I know this sounds like it's far afield, but just there are in Dumbo, which is under Manhattan Bridge Overpass, down underneath the Manhattan Bridge Overpass, I think it's called, Dumbo neighborhood in Brooklyn. There are 2 schools zoned there. This is a 98% Democrat precinct. It's all Democrats who live there. It is as blue as any part of Brooklyn actually gets. And every few years, you know what happens? Somebody at one of the school board meetings says, hey, there's one school that is really high, public school, really high performing, and it's roughly 75% white and Asian. And there's another public school for the Dumbo area of Brooklyn that is really low performing based on test scores and et cetera, that is roughly 75% Black and Hispanic in terms of the student body makeup. And this entirely Democrat precinct, parents go to war with the school board. Why? Because they say, well, why don't we just take half the students from one and put them in the other, and we'll just mix the
zoning.
We'll just change the school board zoning so that we'll have half and half. We'll split the student bodies in half. These lib parents lose their minds.
Oh yeah,
that is what you saw in Martha's Vineyard. Everybody,
the woke white people are destroying this country. And I argued this yesterday, Buck, but what really happens is they advocate for policies that they never have to deal with themselves. Oh, public schools need to be closed because your kids are in private school and or you can afford incredible tutors. You need to wear masks. Oh, well, you get to work from home and it doesn't impact you. Remote work is important. Well, yeah, you get to sit in front of your computer at home and watch Netflix while you're eating Cheetos. And now with the Martha's Vineyard situation,
by the way,
illegal immigration, we're all in favor of it until it actually shows up.
I want to make sure I give everybody the right. It's actually, so it's public school 8 in Brooklyn Heights versus public school 307 in Vinegar Hill. One is very oversubscribed and one is very undersubscribed. And the city has proposed shifting the families in Dumbo, which is the area, from PS8 to PS307. So the school rezoning, this is, I mean, if you're trying to find, Clay, the most liberal part of the 5 boroughs with the highest per capita income, Dumbo would be right there. And they go to the mat to make sure that they don't actually have to have this changing of the schools so that their kids will be in the more minority prevalent school.
Doesn't surprise me at all. There's a lot of not in my backyard liberals They're all in favor of left-wing policies as long as they can go away to their island exclusive location that is filled with a bunch of super rich, woke white people like they are, so they can walk into their shops that have the "We welcome everyone" signs, and until their way of life is just a little bit questioned. This is the defund the police crowd, Buck. These are people who said, "Oh my God, I feel so bad for George Floyd. We've got to do away with police everywhere. We got to defund them." Woke white people, they didn't defund their own police. You go into the richest neighborhoods of any American city, there's a lot of white people there, and guess what? They still got police. You know where you're going to get pulled over for speeding a little bit too much? The richest, whitest area of every city. They defunded the police in the poor areas, so Hispanic, poor white people, poor Asian people, poor people who live in those communities, they don't get the opportunity to make a choice because the woke white people know what's better for them. They defunded the police in those communities because they don't have to worry about the crime. They can pretend that they are better and more of a virtue signaling than anyone else, and they're destroying communities they don't live in. As soon as the chicken comes home to roost, oh, it's a big deal.